ahead, and if you haven't been following, we've each picked two teams in the division, gone over their schedule. This is a collective. I would do two teams in the division. Zach would do two teams in the division, and then we went over one division each week. We've now done the AFC East, North, South, and West, so now it's time to go over each division. Let's start on the other side with the AFC West. I'll have you read that off, and then who picked the teams with that record, and how that division's going to shape up.
Yeah, so you had the Chiefs and the Broncos. I had the Chargers and Raiders. To win the division, we had the Chiefs. You picked the Chiefs to go 11-6. Little bit of a buffer there between 11-6 and 13-4, but you had them final score 11-6. Chargers, I picked to go 10-7. You picked the Broncos to go 8-9, which I think is right on the nose there. And then the Raiders having a tough season, going 3-14, worst in the AFC. I can see that completely. So we have them there. Chiefs would win that division. Chargers, potentially a playoff team right there.
Yeah, potentially a playoff team in the hunt. We'll get to where our playoff picture is, but I think that's how this division will finish, 1 through 4. Whether you disagree with the record, you think the Chiefs will maybe be a little bit. I'd still have some trepidation with that Super Bowl hangover, so I'm a little bit more conservative on here. And then the Chargers 10-7. Some fans think they'll be better because of injuries, but I think that Eckler drama is a little bit too much, and then him a year older. Keenan Allen a year older, and then Raiders bad, Broncos. No one has any clue what that team's going to be.
Yeah, if anything, maybe the Broncos surpass the Chargers if the Chargers deal with injuries again this year, and if they can get what's left of Russell Wilson, sure. I don't think there's any way any of these teams surpass the Chiefs. I would have the Chiefs winning maybe another win in there. I think 12-5 makes a lot of sense for the Chiefs.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's going to be Chiefs at the top, Raiders at the bottom, and then Chargers and Broncos fighting for second place.
Yeah, and then it's going to be tough to dethrone the Chiefs in that division, but a division that's terrible. We should know how it's going to play out exactly. Probably the worst division in the NFL. We have the AFC South. So I picked the Jaguars and the Titans. You had the Texans and the Colts. So at the Jaguars at number 1, finishing at 14-3. You have the Texans finishing at 8-9, the 2 seed in that division. And then I picked the Titans to go 5-12, and you picked the Colts to go 5-12 as well. So we kind of just put the Titans above them out of respect, but we think they're both kind of be in that 5-7 win range, and we think the Texans are going to be in that 6-9 win range.
Yeah, I think maybe I was a little harsh with the Colts, but this is a team that I think they have a better roster than the Titans currently, but they have a brand new head coach. There could be some coaching issues to start the season. Plus, they're also rocking it with Minshew to start the season, and then eventually Anthony Richardson. And this is a team that a lot of question marks. Titans seem to be kind of regressing pretty heavily. The Texans, definitely bullish on the Texans, whether they're 8-9, 7-10, 9-8, whatever it is. Definitely think the Texans are going to make a big leap. They got their quarterback. They got their defensive player that's going to make some noise. New head coach, I believe, in DeMeco Ryans. So overall, I feel like this is exactly how the AFC South will play out.
Yeah, and I think defensively is where they'll take their step forward. DeMeco Ryans had the biggest balls in the NFL draft, and he laid them out there on the table. He needed a whole wheelbarrow and a semi-truck to haul those around because he was like, not only do I want the second pick, I want to get greedy and go out there and get my quarterback as well. I'm going to take a gamble, give away some cachet for next year in the draft, and then I'm going to go out there and get CJ Stroud because we believe in him as our leader. So I just love the way that sets the tone for your season. And then you have brought in some receivers, some veteran receivers on that team, and then you also have Dameon Pierce coming off an excellent rookie year, and I think that defense will definitely be a factor. And you play in the AFC South, and the reason why, if you're wondering why the Jaguars are 14-3, they play another one of the worst divisions in the NFL. They have the NFC South, which I think probably the worst in the NFL. Everyone would be able to agree.
Yeah, because at least in the AFC South, you have a title contender. But in the NFC South, you have the Falcons, so I think are a playoff team.
Yeah.
But other than that, you have the Bucs that are in rebuilding. You have the Saints that are kind of middle of the pack, and then the Panthers who are rebuilding it as well. So a lot of rebuilding pieces there.
Okay. And then a lot of slander for you in the AFC North. You'll get a lot of hate for some of your picks. So why don't you tackle that one?
Yeah. So AFC North, you picked the Bengals to go 13-4. Bengals, perennial playoff team, perennial contender. The last several years makes sense there. You also picked the Steelers to go 11-6, which I feel like might catch a lot of people off guard, but definitely formidable if TJ Watt can stay healthy. I picked the Browns to go 10-7, definitely a little bit more bullish than other teams, but the roster around them makes perfect sense, 10-7. And then I picked the Ravens to go 8-9, which I think is, believe it or not that crazy. And a lot of the comments think I am. You have a team that's constantly injured. Lamar Jackson's had injury issues. You have Odell that's had injury issues. And outside of that, look at every other team in that division and look at their receivers, look at their weapons. Every team in that division has a good defense. That's not a standing out part for me. So overall, 8-9. Do I have the Ravens finishing last? Yes, I do. Unless if the Browns, if Deshaun Watson's not the same guy, which I think he can at least be better than last year. Yeah, makes sense to me.
Yeah, and if Deshaun's himself, he's better than Lamar. Like, sorry. Do I think he's going to be himself? No. Probably about 80%, but he's still going to be really good. And he can pass way better than Lamar. And the past 2 seasons, Lamar Jackson on cue has gotten hurt between like week 6 and 8, and it's happened back-to-back years. And if you're at quarterback who runs a lot and is not a great thrower from the pocket, I don't think like you don't have that much of like a way to prevent injuries from happening. So it's like the fact that he got injured the past 2 years would be a huge cause for concern, because I don't think he's a guy who's going to be able to bounce back from having injury issues when he's perpetually hurt.
Yeah, I think that's fair. So the Bengals win that division. Steelers would have a wild card spot. That brings us to the AFC East, which we have. You picked the Dolphins to go 14-3. You also picked the Bills to go 11-6. I picked the Jets to go 10-7 and the Patriots to go 7-10, having a lackadaisical year. This is before a potential D-Hop signing, so that might be updated later on. But thoughts on how this plays out? You have the Dolphins as the 2 seed here, and the Bills and Jets in the mix as well.
Yeah, I think the Dolphins are going to be AFC Rams. That's kind of the culture they're building on that team, where they're going out there getting talent. I'd say if you look at the receiver combos, the Dolphins have probably they have the fastest wide receiver duo of all time, and that talent on offense, Mike McDaniel, and then you brought in a competent backup in Mike White, where I think Mike White, with the weapons around him, if he can win with the dysfunctional New York Jets, and everything they were going through, he can definitely win with the Dolphins. He went on the road in tough environments and threw for 300+ yard games. So I think you can win with him. And if you have any quarterback besides Sky Moore, you almost beat the Bills in a wild card game last year. And then you add Jalen Ramsey as a leader on that defense when you already had a great cornerback. So now your defense is looking rock solid. And Bradley Chubb was the one they brought in last year. He'll be acclimated another year. And then the Bills, 11-6. I think that's fair.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is how our playoff picture would shake out. So with all of the standings here, we'd have the Jags as the 1 seed.
Okay.
Which, easier schedule, a team that gets an extra leap. They got Calvin Ridley. They also drafted pretty well last year as well. Another year acclimated. Doug Peterson. And then 2 seed, we have the Dolphins. 3 seed, the Bengals. 4 seed, the Chiefs, which might be low for them. And then the wild card spots, we have the Bills as the 5, the Steelers as the 6, and then battling it out for the 7th seed would be the Chargers, Browns, and Jets to fill out the rest of the playoff brackets. But what do you think about this?
Yeah, this is really tough. But I think the Jags definitely have to be the 1 seed this year, especially with how easy their schedule is. You should definitely be the 1 seed. And then the Dolphins right there in 2. I think if anyone has any like real argument against the list, it would probably be the Dolphins there. But I think with their schedule this year, they still have a pretty easy schedule. And then Tua, Mike White, I think with all those weapons, 2 is fine. And then the Bengals always start slow, and they're always about the 3 or the 4 seed, so that's good. And then the Chiefs, coming off a Super Bowl hangover, you don't have as much talent as the Dolphins or the Jaguars, so I think that's something that really plays into it. And coming off a Super Bowl hangover, Patrick Mahomes is still the best quarterback in the NFL, but he does have some games where he leaves it up for grabs. So I think 11-6, 12-5, they would still be the 4 seed, so that's fine. And then the Bills at 5, I just don't think they're going to win the division this year.
Yeah, I mean, the Dolphins, you've compared them to the Rams. I think that's valid. They have a more talented roster.
Yeah.
100%. You got great corners. You have good linebackers. Their only true question is offensive line, which they addressed in the offseason. And then you have the best receiver core in that division. Running backs, they signed a couple. They drafted Devin Achane, he was a highly coveted prospect this draft. So overall, I mean, if Tua can play as well as he did before his concussions,
Yeah.
if they can stay healthy, if this is a full 17-game Dolphins, 14-3, 13-4, 12-5, absolutely, I see the Dolphins there.
Yeah, and then I think the real argument here is, why do I think the Steelers are better than the Chargers, Browns, and Jets? And that would be, I think the Steelers would have the best defense. I think they have the most stable coach, and he's never had a losing season. And I think Kenny Pickett definitely showed flashes at the end of the year that he could make those athletic on the run throws. And then TJ Watt is now focusing on injury prevention in his offseason plan. He talked about how him being off the field has definitely affects his team. And you can show that the Steelers are a completely different team with and without TJ Watt. And I think when TJ Watt's healthy for a full year, I think that defense is one of the best defenses in the NFL. He creates turnovers and wins games by himself on top of George Pickens, year 2. I think they'll have one of the better receiving cores. And then you bring in Allen Robinson, who's a real leader in that wide receiver room, which they didn't have with AB, Martavis Bryant, and Marcus Wheaton and all those guys. So I think that, and then Mike Tomlin being the stable coach he is, for me, Najee Harris not being injured this year and Fred Warren as a duo.
Yeah, absolutely. So last year when they had TJ Watt, they were 8-2.
Yeah.
And over the last 2 years, they're 17-7 when they have TJ Watt. Basically, TJ Watt's there. They're one of the best teams in the AFC North. So I don't think it's that crazy. Maybe a 10-7 season is more formidable. But I love George Pickens. I've been in love with George Pickens since he made that miraculous circus catch early in the season last year. This is a team that even last year, when they had Mitch Trubisky, who was not a good fit for him at all, before they even had Kenny Pickett, could not move the ball. Their biggest problem last year was their offense. Their defense kept them in the games for most of it. The fact that they were still able to be 9-8 and still fight for a playoff spot, credits to them. And I think this year, they've improved their offensive line. Their first pick went to a tackle. So I absolutely think that they'll have a better offensive line. Najee will be healthy. They got a couple other backs that can work there with them. One of the best wide receiver cores in the AFC, along with Pat Freiermuth, who's really nice with it. And then their defense. TJ Watt stays healthy, and they're going to win games.
Yeah, and part of it is they're just the fucking Pittsburgh Steelers. And when you say Chargers, Browns, Jets, and you say Steelers, it's like, okay. If it's like a debate, I'm going to go with the Steelers, just for history's sake.